I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Tom, and I had what I thought was a solid marriage with my wife, Linda. We had been together for over 15 years, and like many couples, we had our ups and downs, but for the most part, I believed we were on the same page. I was in the middle of downsizing our home and planning for retirement when everything came crashing down. The first sign of trouble struck me like a bolt from the blue. Linda, usually so engaged with family and home, started acting distant. I noticed she'd spend more nights out with friends and had become increasingly evasive about her plans. Whenever I asked her about her day or her outings, she'd give me these vague, half-hearted responses that did little to reassure me. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Was it just stress? Was it the prospect of retirement? Or was something more sinister at play? I tried to brush it off. I mean, it's not uncommon for couples to hit a rough patch when facing big life changes, right? But deep down, I started picking up on little things that didn't sit right. One evening, as I was cleaning out the garage, I found a receipt tucked away in the pocket of one of her old jackets. It was an expensive hotel in town, and the date was just a week prior. A wave of confusion washed over me. Had she booked a getaway without telling me? It struck me as odd, especially since we were planning a relaxing retirement together. The more I thought about it, the more I started to question everything. I began keeping tabs on her with what little resources I had. I checked her phone while she was in the shower, rifled through her purse when she left it unattended. It felt like I was becoming that cliché husband who snoops, but I was desperate for answers, especially as my gut feeling was telling me something was off. Then one day, as I was sitting in my office, going through some old photos for a scrapbook I was making for us, I stumbled upon a photo on her phone that shattered my world. It was a picture of Linda with another man, arms wrapped around each other, both of them smiling like they were in paradise. My heart dropped. The date on the photo was from just 2 days ago. The realization hit me like a freight train. She was cheating on me. I was furious. I felt sick to my stomach. How could she do this to me? I thought about all the years we spent together, the sacrifices we made for each other, the love we promised. It felt like a brutal betrayal. I had been working so hard to create a future for us, and this was how she repaid me. When she returned home that evening, I knew I couldn't let this go any longer. I confronted her, and it was like flipping a switch. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a defensive, calculating version of Linda. I threw the photo in her face, and the room filled with silence, heavy and suffocating. "Who the hell is he?" I demanded, my voice cracking with emotion. Linda's response was a mix of anger and denial, claiming that it was a mistake and nothing serious. She tried to play the victim, flipping the narrative on me, insisting that I had changed since I started downsizing our home and planning for retirement. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I was, trying to prepare for a new chapter in our lives, and she was off gallivanting with someone else. The confrontation quickly escalated into a shouting match, filled with accusations and tears. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly heartbroken. In that moment of chaos, I realized I had a decision to make. This was the man I thought I was building a future with, and now I was faced with the wreckage of what our life had become. As the dust started to settle, I began to think about what I needed to do next. Was there any way to salvage this relationship? Could I trust her again? Or was it time to walk away and redefine my life without her? I had no answers yet. What I did know was that the love I thought was unbreakable was now shattered, and I had to figure out how to pick up the pieces. After the confrontation, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, caught between anger and disbelief. The woman I thought I knew, my wife, my partner, had betrayed me in the most intimate way. I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying our life together like a movie stuck on repeat. The memories morphed into a montage of happy moments, tainted now by the harsh reality of her infidelity. The following days were a blur. Linda and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was like two strangers exchanging pleasantries. I couldn't shake the image of her with that other man, and every time I looked at her, I felt a pang of betrayal. She tried to reach out to explain, but I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. A part of me wanted to understand, to unpack the reasons behind her actions, but another part screamed at me to protect myself from further hurt. I started doing some digging, trying to uncover the truth behind her affair. It was a dangerous game, one that had me lurking in the shadows, but I was desperate for clarity. I learned that the man in the photograph was a coworker named Jake. They had crossed paths during a project, and from what I could gather, their relationship had escalated quickly. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Jake was younger, charismatic, and from what I overheard, he was single. My mind raced with questions. What did he have that I did? What had she told him about our marriage? I tried to gather my thoughts and emotions, but it felt like I was walking on a tightrope, teetering between wanting to confront her again and needing to maintain some semblance of dignity. I decided to gather evidence, so I spent the next few evenings secretly following her. I would sit in my car parked at a distance, waiting to see if she would meet up with Jake, hoping for a glimpse of the reality I was too afraid to face. One evening, I watched her from the street as she stepped into a local bar with a group of friends. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of anger and dread clawing at my insides. I waited. After what felt like hours, I saw Jake walk in and my heart dropped. They hugged, and I could see the way she lit up at the sight of him. It was infuriating and heartbreaking all at once. I felt like a fool sitting there, but I had to see it for myself. When Linda finally returned home late that night, I confronted her again. "You were with him, weren't you?" I barked, the words spilling out in a rush. She looked taken aback. A mixture of surprise and guilt washed over her face. "I can explain, Tom," she started, but I cut her off. "Explain what? That you're cheating on me with your coworker. That you're lying to my face while I'm trying to rebuild our life together." My voice was raised, but I couldn't control my anger. "You had the audacity to stand there and tell me it was a mistake, yet here you are spending time with him like it's no big deal." Her defenses came up again. "You don't understand, it's complicated," she yelled back. "You've been so focused on downsizing and planning for retirement that you've ignored me. I felt so alone, Tom." Every word felt like a slap in the face. I had been doing everything I could to secure our future, and now she was blaming me for her own choices. The conversation spiraled into another argument, filled with accusations and hurtful words. I felt crushed under the weight of it all. I began to wonder if I had truly lost her. Was the woman who stood before me the same one I had married? Or had I been blindsided by the reality that she had been living a double life? I wanted to scream, to cry, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. After our explosive confrontation, I decided to take a step back. I needed time to think, to come to terms with what was happening. I called a close friend, Mark, who had always been a voice of reason in my life. I shared everything with him, the discovery, the confrontations, the emotions swirling inside me. "Tom, you deserve better than this," he said, his voice steady and calm. "You need to think about what you want moving forward. You can't make a decision when you're so emotionally charged. Take some time for yourself." His words echoed in my mind. I realized that I needed to focus on my own well-being. I had spent too long trying to fix our marriage, and in the process I had neglected myself. I decided it was time to put some distance between us. I moved into the guest room, needing a physical barrier to separate myself from the turmoil. As the days turned into weeks, I began to find a semblance of clarity. I focused on my work, threw myself into projects to distract myself from the emotional pain. I took long walks, spent time with friends, and rediscovered hobbies I had let slide. The more time I spent away from Linda, the more I realized how deeply I had been affected by her betrayal. The emotional impact was profound. I was angry, sad, and confused, but through it all, I found a spark of resolve. I wasn't going to let this define me. I began to contemplate my next steps, weighing my options. Do I try to salvage this marriage, or do I cut my losses and move on? The answer didn't come easily, but I knew I had to be true to myself. I deserved respect and love, and I needed to decide if I could ever trust Linda again. As I navigated this emotional maze, I began to see a path forward, one that didn't just involve her. I needed to reclaim my life, whatever that might look like. As I settled into my new routine, I found myself wrestling with conflicting emotions. There were moments when I missed Linda terribly, the woman who had been my partner for so long. Then there were moments of clarity when I remembered the hurt she had caused. It was a complex emotional dance, one I never expected to be part of. I spent a lot of time thinking about our marriage and what had brought us to this point. One evening, as I was unwinding after work, I received a text from Linda asking if we could talk. My immediate instinct was to ignore her, but I realized avoiding the conversation wouldn't do me any good. I needed to face this head-on if I was going to move forward, whether that meant trying to reconcile or finally letting go. I agreed to meet her at a local coffee shop, a neutral ground, away from the tension of our home. When I arrived, Linda was already seated, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her coffee cup. She looked different, haggard and worn, as if the emotional toll of our situation was weighing heavily on her. I took a seat across from her, and we both sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. "Tom, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I messed up. I can't change what happened, but I want to try to explain." I raised an eyebrow, skepticism flooding my thoughts. "Explain what?" "That you found comfort in another man while I was working hard to secure our future, that you felt neglected while I was trying to provide for us." I couldn't hide my bitterness. "Please let me talk," she pleaded, desperation in her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. I felt so alone, and when Jake showed interest in me, I was flattered. I didn't think it would turn into something physical. I thought it was just harmless flirting at first." "Harmless flirting," I scoffed. "You don't just end up in bed with someone by accident, Linda. You made choices." Her shoulders slumped, and I could see her fighting back tears. "I know. I take full responsibility for my actions. I never wanted to hurt you. It just spiraled out of control. I realized too late how much I valued what we had." I sat back in my chair, trying to process her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to buy into the narrative that she was genuinely remorseful, but another part of me was cautious, remembering the hurt and betrayal. "What makes you think I can ever trust you again?" I asked, my voice steady. "I don't expect you to just forgive me," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to try and make things right. I'm willing to go to counseling, to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. I love you, Tom. I want us to work." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope mixed with doubt. Could we really rebuild what we once had? As I looked into her eyes, I saw a mix of fear and determination. I wanted to believe it was genuine. But trust is not built in a day, and I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. "I need time to think about this," I said, my voice softer now. "I can't just jump back into things because you say you want to fix it. It's going to take more than words." "I understand," she replied, her expression a mix of acceptance and sorrow. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here ready to do the work." As we parted ways, my head was spinning. I had a decision to make, and the weight of it felt heavier than ever. I returned home that evening and sat in silence, my thoughts racing. Part of me yearned for reconciliation, for the love and stability we once shared. But another part of me couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, the pain that lingered like a dark cloud over my heart. The next few days were a whirlwind of reflection. I sought solace in activities that brought me joy, working on my garden, spending time with friends, and reconnecting with hobbies I had neglected. I began to realize that I had been putting my identity on the back burner for so long, prioritizing our marriage over my own happiness. I talked with Mark frequently, who reminded me to focus on what I truly wanted for myself. "You're not just Tom and Linda anymore. You're Tom. Remember that," he said during one of our conversations. It was a vital reminder that I needed to reclaim my sense of self amid the chaos. As I spent time reflecting, I also started to think about counseling. The idea of having a neutral third party facilitate discussions about our marriage felt necessary. If I was going to give Linda a chance, we would need professional guidance to navigate the choppy waters ahead. The days turned into weeks, and I knew I had to make a decision. Linda reached out regularly, each time expressing her desire to make amends and work on our relationship. But the hurt was still fresh, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I sat down one night, pen and paper in hand, and started listing the pros and cons of staying versus leaving. On one hand, I had years of history with Linda, a shared life that included dreams of retirement and companionship. On the other hand, I had been betrayed in the most profound way. I wanted to believe in love, but I also wanted to protect myself from further heartache. As I went through the list, I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I needed to be honest with myself. I had to confront the reality of my feelings, acknowledging the pain while also recognizing the possibility of rebuilding. Ultimately, the decision would come down to whether or not I could see a future with Linda, one where trust could be rebuilt. As I prepared for my next conversation with her, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I was ready to confront the truth, whatever that may be. When the day finally came for my next meeting with Linda, I felt a cocktail of emotions swirling inside me. I had spent the past few weeks contemplating our future, grappling with the remnants of love, trust, and betrayal. I knew I had to be honest with her, and I needed to articulate my feelings clearly. We agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where we had last spoken, and I arrived early, using the time to gather my thoughts. As I waited, I replayed our past. In my mind, our wedding day, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the present. Will we ever be able to return to that place of happiness? Or had too much damage been done? When Linda arrived, I could see the anxiety etched on her face. She looked hopeful yet nervous, as if she were bracing for the worst. I gestured for her to sit down, and we exchanged a brief but tense greeting. The air between us was charged with anticipation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my voice steady. "I've thought about us, about what you said and what we've been through. I want to be honest with you about where I stand." She nodded, her eyes wide with expectation. "I'm ready to hear whatever you need to say, Tom." Taking a deep breath, I continued, "I want to believe you when you say you want to make things right. I can see that you're remorseful, and part of me wants to give us another chance. But I can't pretend that everything is magically okay now. Trust needs to be rebuilt, and I'm not sure how we can do that." "I understand," she said, a hint of relief washing over her. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I can go to counseling, and I'm open to any suggestions you have." I had been thinking about this, and it felt like the right path forward. I think counseling could be a good start. If we're going to work through this, we need a safe space to talk about our feelings and the issues we've faced. It's not just about forgiving you. It's about understanding why this happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice earnest. "I'll do anything to make this work. I want you to know I'm committed to putting in the effort. I realize now how much I took our relationship for granted." As we delved deeper into the conversation, we began to address the issues that had contributed to our breakdown. I voiced my frustrations about her feeling neglected, while I was focused on downsizing and planning for our future. Linda opened up about her feelings of isolation during that time and how she had been seeking validation from someone else. "I never wanted to hurt you, Tom," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I was just so lost and felt like I didn't have a partner anymore." Hearing her admit that was difficult but necessary, we talked about our expectations for each other moving forward, and it felt like we were laying the groundwork for rebuilding. It was far from a perfect conversation, but it was a start. After we wrapped up our discussion, I proposed that we schedule our first counseling session together. Linda agreed, her relief palpable. I could see a spark of hope in her eyes, but I knew that hope alone wouldn't be enough. We had a long road ahead. Over the next few weeks, we attended our first few counseling sessions. The therapist, a kind yet firm woman named Dr. Harris, guided us through the process, helping us navigate our emotions and the complexities of our marriage. It was challenging, forcing us to confront our feelings head-on. Each session felt like a roller coaster ride. Some days we made progress, while others felt like we were back at square one. I was still grappling with trust issues, and Linda was trying her best to demonstrate her commitment to change. She would often share her struggles with feeling isolated during our transition to a new stage in life, hoping that by being vulnerable, I would understand her perspective better. I began to notice some changes in her behavior. She became more attentive, making an effort to reach out and include me in her day-to-day life. She seemed genuinely committed to reconnecting with me and understanding my feelings. However, I still found it difficult to shake off the memories of her betrayal. I would occasionally catch myself feeling overwhelmed by waves of anger and sadness, despite our progress in counseling. I realized that healing was not a linear process. It was messy and unpredictable. One night, as we sat together on the couch, I felt the urge to have a candid conversation. "Linda, I appreciate the effort you're putting in, but I still struggle with feelings of jealousy and insecurity. It's hard for me to fully trust you again." "I get it, Tom. I know I shattered that trust. All I can do is show you that I'm committed to making things better," she replied, her voice steady. "It's going to take time, and I'm willing to be patient." Her willingness to be patient gave me some comfort, but I also felt a lingering fear. What if we couldn't truly overcome this? What if this was just a temporary fix? As we continued our counseling sessions, I found myself reflecting on my own feelings of self-worth. I had allowed Linda's actions to define my happiness for too long. I realized that I needed to prioritize my own well-being, regardless of the outcome of our marriage. I started to reconnect with friends outside of our relationship, engaging in activities that brought me joy. I began to focus on my personal development, taking time to invest in myself. It was empowering to reclaim parts of my life that I had neglected while being consumed by the turmoil of our relationship. Through the process, I learned to set boundaries for myself, both in our marriage and in my personal life. I had to be honest with myself about what I needed, and I was determined to advocate for those needs. As we continued down this path, I felt a growing sense of resilience within me. The pain was still there, but I was learning to navigate it. I began to entertain the idea that, while the road ahead was uncertain, it was one I could walk with strength and clarity, no matter what the outcome might be. The question lingered in the back of my mind: could our marriage survive this? Only time would tell. But I knew one thing for sure: I was ready to fight for my happiness, whatever that looked like moving forward. As the weeks rolled into months, the reality of our situation continued to evolve. Linda and I maintained our counseling sessions, and I could see that she was genuinely trying to rebuild our relationship. She was committed, and I was beginning to appreciate the small changes she was making, whether it was a thoughtful gesture or simply taking an interest in my day. But as I allowed myself to feel hopeful, I still had to confront the reality that rebuilding trust was a slow and arduous process. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Linda and I returned home feeling emotionally drained. We sat in the living room, the weight of the conversation still hanging heavily between us. I had opened up about my feelings of inadequacy and how her infidelity had shattered not just my trust in her but also my self-esteem. "I want to be better for you, Tom," she said, her voice earnest. "I want to be the partner you deserve, someone who supports you and makes you feel valued." "Linda, I appreciate that, I truly do," I replied, searching for the right words. "But I need you to understand that I'm still healing. There are days when I struggle with everything that happened. I'm not sure if I can ever go back to how things were." "I don't want things to go back to how they were," she interjected, her tone firm. "I want us to build something new, something stronger. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to show you that I can be trustworthy again." As the conversation unfolded, I felt a combination of gratitude and frustration. I wanted to believe her, but I also feared that I was setting myself up for more heartache. I found myself torn between the woman I loved and the woman who had hurt me so deeply. The next day, I decided to take a step back from the emotional intensity of our situation. I reached out to Mark and suggested we go for a hike over the weekend. I needed to clear my head, to step away from the heaviness that had become my daily existence. Nature had always been a grounding force for me, a place where I could reflect and regain perspective. As we hiked along the trails, Mark listened attentively to my thoughts about Linda and our relationship. "It sounds like you're making progress, but you need to protect yourself too," he advised. You have to be honest about what you want and don't be afraid to prioritize your own well-being. I know, but it's hard to balance that with wanting to support her, I admitted. I don't want to shut her out, but I also need to feel secure in my own life. Trust your instincts, he replied, his voice steady. You've been through a lot and it's okay to take your time. Just remember that you deserve happiness and respect, no matter what decision you make. His words resonated with me, and I felt a sense of clarity emerging. I returned home that evening feeling lighter and more focused. I knew I needed to have another candid conversation with Linda, one that would address not only our relationship but also my own needs and boundaries. A few days later, we sat down again in our living room. Linda, I think we need to talk about something important, I began, my tone serious. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I want to clarify where I stand in all of this. Okay, she replied, her expression attentive. What's on your mind? I appreciate the effort you're putting in and I see that you're trying to make amends, I continued. But I need to be honest with you. I'm still navigating my feelings of hurt and betrayal. I can't just jump back into our old dynamic without addressing those feelings. I understand, she said, her voice steady. What do you need from me? I think it's crucial that we establish some boundaries as we continue to rebuild our trust, I responded. I need to feel secure in our relationship, and part of that means being able to communicate openly about how I'm feeling. I don't want to suppress my emotions or pretend everything is fine when it's not. I'm here for that, she said, a hint of relief in her expression. I want to create a safe space for both of us to share our thoughts and feelings without judgment. We discussed ways to improve our communication, agreeing to dedicate time each week to check in with each other about our emotional state. It felt productive, like we were laying the groundwork for a more transparent relationship. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see some progress. Linda was more engaged and I felt less guarded. I still had moments of insecurity, particularly when I thought about her affair, but I was learning to articulate those feelings rather than letting them fester. It was a step forward, albeit a small one. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, I decided to take a bold step. Linda, I think it's time for us to take a weekend trip, just the two of us. A chance to reconnect outside of our usual routine. Her eyes lit up with excitement. That sounds amazing. Where were you thinking? How about we head to that cabin we used to love, the one by the lake? I suggested. I think it could be a great way to step away from everything and focus on each other. She smiled, nodding enthusiastically. I'd love that. It'll be nice to escape for a bit and just enjoy each other's company. We spent the next few days planning for the trip, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of excitement. The thought of getting away together felt like a fresh start, a chance to reconnect in an environment that held cherished memories. When we arrived at the cabin, the air was crisp and refreshing. The picturesque view of the lake brought a sense of calm that I desperately needed. As we settled in, we spent the evening cooking together, laughing and reminiscing about our past adventures. That night, as we sat by the fireplace, I felt a warmth spreading through me. Linda was smiling, and for a moment I could almost forget the dark clouds that had been hanging over us. We talked about our hopes and dreams, sharing our visions for the future, an exercise that felt both hopeful and necessary. As we cuddled together on the couch, I felt a familiar connection beginning to resurface. It reminded me of the love we had once shared, and I realized that while the journey to rebuild our relationship would still be difficult, there was something worth fighting for. However, I also understood that this wouldn't erase the pain of betrayal. The road ahead would not be without its challenges, but for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. As we drifted off to sleep that night, I held Linda close, feeling the warmth of her presence beside me. I knew that we had a long way to go, but in that moment I felt a fragile hope that we could find our way back to each other, one step at a time. The next morning, I woke up to the sounds of birds chirping outside the cabin. The sunlight poured through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. I turned to see Linda still asleep beside me, her face peaceful and serene. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I knew we were still in the early stages of rebuilding our relationship, but being here in this moment felt like a step in the right direction. We spent that day exploring the area, hiking along scenic trails and taking in the beauty of nature. There was something revitalizing about being outside together, disconnected from the worries of our daily lives. As we walked, we talked about everything, from our shared memories to our plans for the future. It felt good to engage with each other without the weight of betrayal hanging over us. Later that evening, we sat by the lake, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky transformed into a canvas of oranges and pinks, and I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was a moment of clarity. I realized that while the journey ahead would be challenging, it was one I was willing to take if it meant discovering if we could truly rebuild our relationship. Tom, Linda said, breaking the comfortable silence. I know we still have a lot of work to do, but I want to thank you for giving us this chance. I'm committed to making things work. I looked at her, the earnestness in her eyes reminding me of the woman I had fallen in love with. I appreciate that, Linda, but I need you to know that it's going to take time. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and I still have my moments of doubt. I understand, she replied, nodding. I never want to push you. I want you to feel safe in this relationship. As the sun faded into the night, we shared our hopes and fears, laying the groundwork for honest communication moving forward. I felt a renewed sense of purpose in our conversation, and it became clear that we were both willing to put in the effort needed to address the issues that had plagued us. After returning home, I continued to focus on myself while remaining open to the possibility of a renewed relationship with Linda. I made it a point to prioritize my own happiness, whether that meant pursuing new hobbies or spending time with friends. I was learning that my well-being was not contingent on our marriage, but rather an essential part of my identity. Linda continued to demonstrate her commitment to rebuilding our trust. She made an effort to include me in her life, sharing her thoughts and feelings openly. We established a routine of regular check-ins where we could discuss our emotions and any concerns that arose. This new level of communication allowed us to address issues before they became significant problems, and I began to see a transformation in our dynamic. Over time, the fear of betrayal that had once clouded my mind started to dissipate. I found myself laughing more, allowing myself to be vulnerable again. There were still moments of insecurity, but I learned to communicate those feelings instead of bottling them up. One evening, as we sat together on the couch watching a movie, I turned to Linda and said, "You know, I feel like we're starting to come back together. It's not perfect, but I can see us working towards something better." She smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "I feel it too, Tom. I know we have to take it one day at a time, and I am here for that journey." As the weeks turned into months, I reflected on how far we had come. We had both faced the demons of our past, learning valuable lessons along the way. I had learned to prioritize my own happiness while she had learned the importance of communication and connection. One night while we were having dinner, I decided to share my thoughts with her. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. It hurt me deeply, but I also see it as a wake-up call for both of us." Linda nodded, encouraging me to continue. "I agree. It forced us to confront what we were ignoring for so long. It's not easy, but I think it's made us stronger. I've learned that trust is fragile and it requires constant nurturing," I said, feeling more confident in my words. "But I also realize that I can't lose myself in trying to make this work. I have to find a balance." "Absolutely. I want to support you in that," she replied earnestly. "We're in this together." As we navigated our new normal, I felt a sense of hope burgeoning within me. The road ahead would still hold its challenges, but I was learning to embrace the journey. I had discovered a newfound strength within myself, and I knew that I could face whatever came our way. Through this experience, I had learned that love is not just about the good times, it's about how you handle the difficult moments together. I realized that while Linda had made a grave mistake, we had both been given an opportunity to grow and redefine our relationship. Our story was far from over, and I knew that with time, patience, and effort, we could continue to build something beautiful. I felt ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that I had the strength to move forward. whether that was together with Linda or eventually on my own. In the end, I had not only learned about love and trust, but I had also rediscovered myself in the process. As I looked ahead, I felt a mix of anticipation and excitement for the new chapters waiting to unfold in my life. Life was unpredictable, but I was ready to face it head on, with or without Linda by my side.